So for the past couple of years, I haven't really been on Tumblr very much. I used to be on there all the time, but I think I've finally grown out of it to an extent. It just doesn't really interest me much anymore. But in the last few weeks, I've become a little more active on there, mostly because I've started to doom scroll on Twitter so aggressively that I've started to run out of tweets multiple times in the day. I'll just have read all of the tweets that there are to read. And I had to keep my tiny Zoomer attention span occupied with something, so Tumblr it was. If you don't know what Tumblr is, first of all, God bless you. I wish I had what you had, and I'm sorry. Tumblr is a social networking website founded in 2007. It's technically a blogging platform, but since its foundation, it's really taken on a life of its own and become a very unique place on the internet. It is largely anonymous, more so than Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. It's less common to see people using their real identities on Tumblr than on those other social medias. Essentially, like Twitter, Reddit, or Facebook, users can post text, videos, photos, and audio, and other users can like and reblog these posts. Interestingly, Tumblr quickly became very popular with young, socially progressive users, many of whom were involved with fandom culture. Fandom meaning the fan bases of popular pieces of media. I would say this hit its peak in 2012, 2013, with the most popular fandoms being Doctor Who, Sherlock, Supernatural, Merlin, Harry Potter, Marvel, Homestuck, Steven Universe, Welcome to Night Vale, and the Lorax for some reason, among many others. Due to the popularity of fandom culture on Tumblr, the website hosts a lot of fan works, fan fiction, fan art, fan videos, cosplay, etc. And in recent years, that fandom culture has definitely deteriorated on Tumblr. I think a lot of people, like myself, grew up and realized that they now found the interests and passions of their youths cringeworthy. So while there is still plenty of fandom activity on the website, there's also a lot of cynicism that I believe is in response to this awkward period in our lives when we were interested in fandoms. With this in mind, I've recently come across several Tumblr posts about fanfiction. Specifically, these are posts that mock the idea of people reading fanfiction instead of so-called real books, or mock people who think that fanfiction is comparable to so-called classic literature or real literature. I hate you fanfiction bitches so much. Literally, why do we have to explain to you every fucking week that your supernatural coffee AU fanfic where the climax is an entire chapter of two guys fucking is not the same shit as Dante's Inferno? From the bottom of my heart, read real books. Define real books, not fanfiction. And then an image of a jester taunting the hounds. I don't even mind that post. I think it's pretty funny, honestly, but one person I follow on Tumblr reblogged that post, and I guess they got some disagreeing responses to it, and so they doubled down and made some of their own posts about the same issue. Your English teachers have failed you if you think that Shakespeare and your coffee shop pegging Voltron AU are on the same level because they both have dick jokes. If you don't know what any of the words in the phrase coffee shop pegging Voltron AU mean, I'm not gonna explain them to you. After that, they posted, okay, since I feel like I'm being too mean about fanfiction, what I will say in its defense is that it's a lot more accessible to people than published books. I can pull up AO3 on my phone in a few seconds, while to pick up a book I would need to travel to a library or spend money to get it. And honestly, the standard length of a fic being the equivalent of a short story makes it a lot easier to consume if you're like me and have a shitty ADHD brain. There is good fanfiction, God knows I've read enough of it, and I don't want to say it's worthless because it's not. It's good as a source of entertainment, but I think it's pretty silly to compare it to high art. They made one final post about it, reading, I guess if I was going to make a comparison, fanfiction as a genre is like fast food. It's enjoyable and easy to find, but it's not going to be served in a Michelin 3-star restaurant. I'm really not a huge fan of fanfiction. I've read some in my time, but I don't think that highly of it. I don't write it myself. But these posts didn't quite sit right with me. I find the issue that the original posters are addressing unrealistic. I find the tone of this type of hot take quite patronizing and simplistic. I think they're making some assumptions about what is real or classic literature, and I think they're feeding into the tired narrative that young girls are stupid for enjoying things that they enjoy. And so, as I try to ignore my country crumbling around me, I say let's talk about what's really important, defending fanfiction from the cynical Tumblr masses. First and foremost, what is fanfiction? Google's dictionary, which is provided by Oxford Languages, defines fanfiction as fiction written by a fan of and featuring characters from a particular TV series, movie, etc. According to Merriam-Webster, fanfiction is defined as stories involving popular fictional characters that are written by fans and often posted on the internet. Dictionary.com defines fanfiction as stories written by everyday fans featuring characters, settings, and plots from their favorite pre-existing TV, novels, manga, movies, and other media. Their entry also mentions the fact that derivative works are by no means a new concept, and that many works of classic literature could technically be considered fanfiction. This is an idea I agree with, and that I think is part of the problem with these types of Tumblr posts. Not all fanfiction is modern, shippy garbage. Derivative works have been around basically as long as there have been original works to derive from. The term fanfiction was first coined in 1939 as a derogatory term for the amateurish sci-fi and fantasy stories published in magazines. So interestingly, from the very beginning, the term was regarded with this judgmental, gatekeepy attitude that we're still seeing on Tumblr today. Like I said, fanfiction is a category of writing that has technically been around for a very long time, but if we're talking strictly modern nerd culture fanfiction, the pioneering authors were Star Trek fans. When Star Trek the original series was airing, these fans, mostly women, published fanfiction in Star Trek fanzines. They were some of the first fans to ship characters. If you don't know what shipping means, again, bless you, and I'm sorry, but shipping is the act of pairing two characters together romantically. The very popular genre of fanfiction that involves same-sex shipping is called slash, as in Kirk/Spock, I guess. Fanfiction that paired Kirk and Spock together was very popular, and also incredibly controversial. This is the late 60s, early 70s we're talking about, so naturally some fans were referring to slashers as, quote, a bunch of twisted sickos. But as you can imagine, that didn't stop anyone from writing fanfiction. So Star Trek fans were really the blueprint for all of fanfiction that was to come, and as technology progressed, so did the methods of writing and sharing fan works. We now have several websites devoted exclusively or mostly to fanfiction, and that's not even counting the dozens of fandom-specific, now long-dead fanfiction websites like trekfiction.com, xfilefic, onedirectionfanfiction.com. And notably, women have largely been at the forefront of modern fanfiction culture for as long as it's been around. That's something to keep in mind for later. Unfortunately, some of the most popular works of fanfiction, ones like 50 Shades of Grey and After that have been traditionally published, are really poorly written, which probably contributes to the pretty bad, embarrassing public perception of fanfiction. But now that we have a little background on what fanfiction is and where it comes from, let's take a look at the problems with these Tumblr hot takes specifically. Problem number 1, this is a fabricated issue. First, and perhaps most importantly, I don't think that the people these posters are referencing exist. Like, with this post about Dante's Inferno. I hate you fanfiction bitches so much. Literally, why do we have to explain to you every fucking week that your supernatural coffee AU fanfic where the climax is an entire chapter of two guys fucking is not the same shit as Dante's Inferno? Who said that? Literally, who is saying that? Who said? Would you tell me who said that? Yeah. People on Tumblr who say things like, LOL, Dante's Inferno is basically self-insert fanfiction, are not literally equating Dante's Inferno to, like, a smutty supernatural fanfiction. It's a funny observation that Dante's Inferno is technically a derivative work. Why are you taking this so seriously? No one is saying that they think fanfiction is better than Shakespeare. Maybe a couple annoying people on Tumblr would say that, but I think the vast majority of fanfiction readers and writers know what they're doing. They know what level it's on. Based on the comments on these posts, I think what likely happens here is that the original poster will make some exaggerated, hyperbolic claim like, you guys need to read real classic books, not just dumb fanfiction. And then people will reply like, well, I do read real books, but, you know, this is kind of a simplistic way of looking at things. And then the original poster will take that as, like, evidence of their claim and double down, like, oh my god, I can't believe you guys actually think that your supernatural fanfiction is better than Shakespeare. And it's like, no, nobody said that. In that same vein, Problem number 2. This is a condescending and simplistic view of the issue. My problem with these posts isn't that I love fanfiction and I think it's amazing. My problem is with these absolutist, judgmental takes. I guess if I was going to make a comparison, fanfiction as a genre is like fast food. It's enjoyable and easy to find, but it's not going to be served in a Michelin 3-star restaurant. What a patronizing way to look at an entire, huge genre of writing. One that, by definition, includes many of your Michelin 3-star books. Even modern internet fanfiction alone is such a vast, vast category of written work that I just think it's silly to act like none of it has any literary value. And again, fanfiction readers and writers know what they're reading and writing. They're not dumb. And probably a lot of them also read real books and the classics. Just because you like one doesn't mean you can't like the other. And more than all of that, you just don't have to be such a dick about it. But I also think there's a problem with idolizing certain written works and not others purely based on whether they're popular, old, or traditionally published. Problem number 3. Media being classic, or for that matter traditionally published, does not inherently make it good. I agree with the original posters that we should all be reading real books in addition to whatever fan fiction you may be reading, but just because a book is traditionally published or even considered a classic doesn't necessarily mean it's amazing literature. Classics can be bad. Traditionally published work can definitely be bad. And do these people not realize that there were bad books even back in the times when classics were published? It kind of reminds me of this one interview from the documentary Side by Side, which is a documentary basically about the film industry transitioning from film to digital. It's also hosted by Keanu Reeves for some reason. And I forget who this interview's with, it's just with some crotchety old guy in the film industry.
Everybody can make a movie now. Movies everywhere. That's a good thing.
I don't think so, actually. There's less good. There's more bad. Because everybody's able to do whatever they want to do. There's the democratization of it, fantastic. But I think my kids will suffer. They will not have the quality that we had growing up. Because there isn't somebody there, there isn't a tastemaker involved.
Wow.
Hi, so editing Jane here. I was just skimming through the documentary to get that clip and to find out who said it. And it was this producer named Lorenzo di Bonaventura, who is best known for producing the Transformers franchise. And I don't want to sound mean, but that is the most hilariously ironic thing I've ever heard in my life. And he basically says, well, nowadays anyone can make a movie, and that's a bad thing, because if anyone can make a movie, then we're gonna have way more bad movies. And that's so stupid, because there have always been bad movies, and that's okay. We have film criticism and film awards and just viewers with critical thinking skills to discern good from bad. And it's the same with books. There has always been bad writing, even a long time ago. There have always been bad authors, and there always will be, no matter how they end up publishing their work or how popular it gets. What I'm trying to say is, fanfiction is not this threat to the sanctity of literature. Trust me, people still read books, they still know what good writing is, even if they read or write fanfiction. I don't understand this weird pearl-clutching attitude that's appearing all of a sudden, especially on Tumblr of all places, as if we're all stupid babies that don't understand what a book is. In my opinion, you enter problematic territory anytime you try to define what a real book or real literature is. And even if a lot of fanfiction isn't good literature, problem number 4, this feeds into the long tradition of mocking young girls for liking young girl things. I think it goes without saying that most fanfiction is written by and for young girls. Not all of it, but most of it. For basically all of time, but notably in the last couple centuries, young girls have borne the brunt of cultural ridicule, despite often being on the cutting edge of new trends. Artists and corporations and studios make media for us, and then we're mocked for liking that media. There's plenty of bad media aimed at men that doesn't receive nearly the same ridicule that woman media receives. Like, the Transformers movies are really, really bad, And yeah, they come out and they get bad reviews, but they don't get anywhere near the same massive cultural pushback that something like Twilight received. And I realize that for many years on Tumblr, we were super into fanfiction and fanworks and fandom in general, and I understand that looking back on that time now, it's hard not to cringe. So I do understand the impulse to want to push back on that embarrassing time in our lives by overcompensating, being overly cynical and critical of fanfiction and other cringy remnants of our youths. But I think that these posts go too far in the opposite direction and ultimately perpetuate the same old misogynistic rhetoric that people have been spewing forever. Again, I'm not a huge fanfiction person. This isn't me saying, I love fanfiction and you all have to love fanfiction and fanfiction is better than Shakespeare. That's definitely not what I'm saying. My problem is with the absolutism, the judgment, the ignorance of these types of statements and assumptions. By most definitions, a lot of the classics are fanfiction. In fact, writing this has made me think a lot about what exactly makes a work fanfiction. And I've come to think that, in a way, any form of adaptation is kind of fanfiction. It's so silly to me to take such a vast category of writing and conclude that none of it could possibly have any value as literature. And to the people who post these things on Tumblr, I will say this. Let people like what they like, don't try to define what real books are, and don't bully girls. Personally, I like the side of internet culture that's currently embracing the dumb stuff that we love. Screw guilty pleasures. Give me the Twilight Renaissance. Let's talk about how great the Mamma Mia movies are. Let's read Wattpad stories and have a fantastic time. I mean, misogynistic internet cynicism with a side of intellectual superiority complex is like so 10 years ago. Get with it. I know you think you're morally superior because you've read Vonnegut or whatever, but it actually doesn't make you better or smarter or cooler than anyone else. And in fact, if you're the kind of person who constantly brags about reading that sort of thing and puts down people who don't, it kind of just makes you a clown. You dropped these, clown. Anyways, I'm gonna go read Twilight because I'm too young and hot to read Shakespeare.